Hello, yeah. Good morning or good evening based on your time zone to everyone. Today, welcome you all in the Meshery development meeting on Wednesday. So, if you forget to put your name there, just like me, put your name here so that we know that you have joined the call. And yeah. Other than that, we have a tradition, like long tradition, to get to know some newcomers joining the call. So I think Alex has joined the call for the first time, if I'm not wrong. Right, Alex?
No, this is not my first time.
Uh, okay, someone else who has joined this call for the first time. Like I keep forgetting the name, so please, keep forgiving me for the. So okay, seems like everyone is old timer here, right? Uh, so let's get started with our first agenda item in the list.
And I wonder if Ashutosh has had a chance to introduce on this call. Mr. Panda, I can't remember. Have you got a chance to say hi to everybody on this call? So,
Ashutosh, you're here, right? Probably he has some issues with his mic. Probably. Yeah. Okay, we'll get back to you once your mic is completely set up. Meanwhile, you can write your introduction, like who you are, in the chat. So let's get rolling with our agenda item. And the first item is by Cyrine, restructuring Meshery and Meshery operator Helm charts. Yeah, it's for you.
Hello, so I'll start by sharing my screen. Okay, so last time when we discussed the Meshery Helm charts, we found that trying to delete the chart that exist in both places are replicated will kind of in all cases lead in a conflict because of the release names Meshery operator. So the best way to deal with that was to completely separate Meshery and Meshery. I think I'm gonna stop the video for me so that it doesn't freeze so easily. Okay. Sharing my screen again. Okay. Okay. Okay, so this is the new PR that I made with Ashish to restructure the Helm charts and make the changes that are necessary in meshery-ctl and meshery server to in order for the operator and meshery charts to be completely separated. So I'm gonna do a small demo for the new set of charts. What I did was previously meshery charts would depend on the operator charts, so I took that off, and so now to deploy them we have to deploy both separately. So the way to do that is by doing Helm install meshery separately and then meshery operator separately too. So this is the release that you get when you only install meshery. This namespace. So as you can see, we have only meshery installed, and these are the dependencies that meshery has. So one thing that I have to do on my PC so that I can show you the meshery interface is I have to kind of configure the new IP that the meshery server has in Nginx. This is something that only I have to do because of my setup. So, gonna copy this here, and then put it in Nginx. Yeah. And to anyone that might be interested in how that might be using EVM too, and interested in how to do it in order to access Meshery using Minikube, can kind of take a look at my setup. You kind of have to do configuration for WebSocket and for Meshery on its own separately. So I'll restart the Nginx now. And there we go. Now we're gonna okay. So just maybe wait for a few seconds so it detects the cluster. There we go. And here in the cluster settings, since I've only just deployed Meshery, we don't really have the Meshery operator yet. Is it lacking a bit? Come on.
But just to add some questions or ask some questions while this is going. So Cyrine, so we have two separate Helm releases, two separate sets of Helm charts today. The proposal is to essentially trying to deduplicate them. Today, you're able to install all of Meshery, including the operator, using a single command. With this change, the user, if they're using Helm to install, they'll need to invoke two Helm commands, or they'll need to do two Helm deployments. Not a huge deal, a slight step back.
Because, well, after discussing it with Ashish, the release name, when you deploy them both together, both operator and Meshery would have the release name. And the way it's currently works in server and Meshery CTL, it will keep, when uninstalling, it will keep looking for Meshery operator release name instead. And so that would create conflict. So now to kind of uninstall the operator, just like he said, have to install it on its own. And that way we get both release names. So have both that are separated like this. Right now, I'm kind of showing everything as a Helm demo, but later on, Ashish, he did a few more commits and can show you how it works once it's well integrated with the Meshery server. So and here we go, the operator is active. To uninstall it too, you can, have to uninstall it on its own.
So if you just install the Meshery Helm chart, you will not get the Meshery operator.
Yes, they're both separated now completely.
Okay.
The only reason to do that is because Helm does not allow to selectively just delete the subcharts. If it does, then we can have that thing. Because if it doesn't, then so we can't. Okay, yeah, Matt has some question or maybe some suggestion.
Yeah. Have you guys looked at the Prometheus operator before? It's an example of something that the CoreOS Prometheus operator, rather, it brings in a bunch of other Helm charts. So if it's the case that when you install the Helm operator, Meshery operator, that Meshery should always be there, right? If it's basically a dependency, then you could have the Meshery operator chart reference the Meshery chart.
Yeah, actually, it looks like that way because of the naming, but it's not like that.
I haven't had a chance to look at the PR, but I was kind of, would we expect the user to do both, or like I could see, like, I install the operator and now I'm done, right? I make CRDs and everything is just handled for me. I never really actually install Meshery and the operator as a user, right? It's either or do I have that?
Actually, yeah. So actually, Meshery is not it's not a operator thing. So it's not a completely Kubernetes native. Operator acts as an extension, and operator has two resources under it, which is MeshSync and the NATS broker that we use. So Meshery server can be kept completely outside of the cluster, not managed by the operator at all. So it's not technically they are not dependencies of each other.
Right.
They can completely coexist independently.
But you could run the server as a CRD as well.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
The operator. I see. So that's the case where you're actually running the server outside cluster. I see. Or even
another way of characterizing the interrelationships between the components and Kubernetes is to say that for any Kubernetes cluster under Meshery's management should have the operator deployed to it. Only one or two or some number less should have Meshery's server and its adapters deployed to it. So the statement is for any Kubernetes cluster, always deploy Meshery operator, and then sometimes deploy Meshery server. So there is, to Matt's point, like, yeah, this thing, I can't tell you how many times I've had this conversation, and I've never really read about Helm myself. And so, yeah, I mean, to Matt's point, like about the example of the Prometheus operator, it just seems like, or just feels like, and Helm may be limited in this way, but it feels like you would be able to have a single release that has a universal component, the operator, that's always installed every time, and then a values, and then occasionally, sometimes you want to install subcharts, and sometimes you don't.
So that's how it works. Basically, the configuration that you send to values in values.yaml ends up being sort of a hierarchical aggregate composite, pick your noun, set a blob of configuration. So for example, and then there are CRDs associated with instances of those sub Helm charts. For example, the Grafana chart, alert manager, Prometheus itself, various service monitors, alert rules, like all of these things then are sort of like, if the CRDs are there, then they get instantiated. So if there's a server, in this case, if there's a server component, then there'll be a server CRD instance. But if it's not there, then it simply won't be made, right? And then if you want, and when it is made, it's using the Meshery Helm chart under the covers, potentially, at least to install the controllers and stuff.
Yeah.
There's other ways to package it up, but Helm, you're right, is kind of limited. So you kind of have to scotch tape and bubblegum it. I can grab a link to the Prometheus operator if you want to see an example of how they do this, which may or may not be what y'all use. But
yeah.
And to Lee's point that, yeah, I know it feels like if you have an operator, you should have Meshery under the subchart. But the problem comes when you try to uninstall the operator. And if operator has Meshery server as a subchart, it will try to go ahead and uninstall Meshery as well. And basically we run into problems because the flow is not that smooth, the installation and uninstallation. It has the permutation and combinations are too much varying, and Helm is a little constrained as to how much I have read the docs of Helm. If someone knows a way to delete a subchart selectively, so in a single release, if we have the dependency charts, and if there is a way to just delete those dependency charts and not delete the parent chart, then we can have a single chart. Otherwise, we'll have to move with this direction.
I don't think that this particular requirement has been lifted, or I think part of the bounds that Ashish and Cyrine and others that have looked at this, that they've operated within, has been true to the statement that Ashish just made, which is that there's a desire to be able to like remove a Meshery server, but leave the operator residual, or potentially to remove the operator and leave Meshery server residual, or one, interchangeably. It could be that, you might be able to make this statement, which is, if there's a cluster that has Meshery server deployed, and therefore also the Meshery operator, if you're going to remove Meshery server and uninstall it as a subchart, that you are forced to also uninstall the operator from the cluster. That doesn't, when you say it like that, or at least when I hear it like that, it doesn't sound too bad. It's not as flexible as you might like, but gosh, if you're removing the server, then most of the time, wouldn't you want to remove the operator? Not all the time. There are use cases where you don't, and I think that that's what we've been trying to achieve, and then hitting the wall against Helm's sophistication. So, but I don't know if it's worth exploring whether or not it's really necessary to be able to allow the user that much flexibility to say, if you're going to remove the server, that you're forced to remove the operator as well.
Okay, so if we package it inside, so let's say someone deployed Meshery and Meshery server deployed, in that release, we deployed the operator. And let's say that now someone wants to undeploy the operator. They can't use the Meshery Helm chart because that will undeploy Meshery, and they can't use the Meshery operator Helm chart because that's under a different, because you installed it via a different release name, and now you're trying. So there is again will be a conflict. I tried a bunch of permutation combinations like that, like the way you are going through all these different combinations. I tried in all of these, there are always some kind of release name conflict that comes. So let me just demo real quick my changes so that. Okay, so my Meshery server has started, and inside I don't have anything in my Meshery namespace. So I'll go with a bunch of system flows. So first is, let's say I open my Meshery for the first time. Okay, so okay, yeah, so there one cluster and data coming. This is from my this is operator is not deployed currently. It was deployed 10 seconds ago. So just when I started Meshery, the first thing it did was it checked if the operator was deployed. If not, it deployed the operator. And this is the old data that I'm getting from my database. So anyway, so if I come over here and I look at operator, and as you can see, the operator was successfully pinged. Operator is there. And here as well, you can see the button is turned on, the operator is there. So if I turn it off now, and so it's turned off. If I go back here, my Meshery operator has terminated now. If I reload the page, now I have added one more, basically one more. If I go over my PR, I guess was somewhere around in the controllers. Yeah, I've added one more state. So currently we had not deployed state, and now I have added undeployed state. So this undeployed, so not deployed is when is the default. So when the first time you log into Meshery, you have your operator is in not deployed state. But if user intentionally undeploys the operator, we don't want them to reload and then the whole operator comes back again. So when someone manually undeploys the operator, it goes into the undeployed state. And when the operator is in undeployed state, we don't automatically do it unless user prompts us to. So if I come back here again, and if I turn on my operator again, and if I go back to my, so the operator comes back. So now it is in deployed state again. So there I've added one more. So now okay, so this was, I was doing everything from meshery UI. Now let me demo it from, let me turn off my operator from here and demo it from meshery-ctl. By meshery operator is gone. So if I do meshery-ctl system start, so there used to be conflict that earlier if you had installed it from UI and then you try to install it from meshery-ctl, the thing is that the chart name and the release name all are like scattered all over the place, and I'm trying to centralize each of these. So there used to be conflict that if you have already installed it or the operator from UI and then you try to do it from the meshery-ctl system start. Okay, actually I uninstalled it. So before I demo it, let me install just to see, just to show that there is no conflict. So yeah. Okay, yeah, so it's back up. And if I do meshery-ctl system start, I'll have to close my local server because both of them listen at 9081 localhost. Yeah, so I had linkerd adapter in my mesh config. My meshery server got started. My operator was already there, so no problems with that. Mesh sync is there, broker is there. And if I uninstall, so yeah, here I can come. I cannot do it right now from this UI. This UI is basically the Meshery's container image running, which is the latest table. And of course, my changes are not on latest table. So if I try to undeploy it here, old methods would be used. So I will not do it. And if I come back here and if I do meshery-ctl system stop, there would be a clean uninstallation of everything. So that if I do, the only thing is that meshery-ctl currently doesn't allow users to only undeploy the operator. If you do meshery-ctl system stop, there is no extra flag for you to just stop the operator. So if I go back here, there would be like everything has been terminated and the whole meshery namespace is cleared and deleted. So this is like a complete cleanup. Right now, we don't have granularity in meshery-ctl to allow for them to selectively just deploy operator. Although we can now, since we have moved to this new approach, we can completely do that. So yeah, the meshery operator has been, everything has been undeployed. It takes time to delete the meshery namespace. So first part of this PR is to have this extra state inside undeployed state inside of the. So we have a centralized way of managing the deployment and undeployment, basically the life cycle of controllers that we have. Controllers are the meshery operator, and the CRDs that come under meshery operator all are come under the umbrella term of controllers. So we have this generic interface that we use for their functionality. We didn't have an undeploy state. So earlier what we were doing is we were deploying it using this new approach of having this centralized logic. But while undeploying, we were using some legacy function, which the comment said it has to be deprecated, but we were still using that to undeploy. So there was this conflict again. So to centralize, I have added this undeploy function here as well, so that everything, all the logic related to every life cycle of the controllers come over here. So yeah, the meshery resources are stopped, the cluster has been cleaned up, and yeah, so that was all from my side. If I start it again, everything will come up without any conflict. So operator again comes up without any conflict, because the charts are separate. So yeah, that was everything from my side.
Oh yeah. In a bigger conversation or a broader discussion here, it's Meshery's genesis was in context of Docker deployments. And so being able to just, deploy as a set of containers, whether that was inside of Kubernetes or outside of Kubernetes. The operator was a way of helping ensure Kubernetes. Well, it was primarily a way of helping ensure that mesh sync was that Meshery server was always in up to speed in sync, doing service discovery in some respects with Kubernetes. And so Meshery has kind of 1 foot in as Kubernetes native and 1 foot out. There's some duplication and overlap that occurs by not necessarily natively being fully Kubernetes native. There's some benefit to not being that way. I'd like to say in so much as like the example being like the Meshery Docker extension, which has helped Meshery be, which has helped like new users sign up by 25% by a lot. Yeah, I don't know. Still a point of confusion. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this. This is an area that it's super important to the project in terms of how it deploys and works. I don't know that it's necessarily a step that it's a step backwards to move to two. Well, we already have 2 releases, 2 duplicative sets of Helm charts. They're just structured differently. The operator is mandated in one and maybe not in the other. It's not really working for us. You guys have been refactoring to make it work for us. The 2 use cases, there's 3 use cases for installing Meshery using Helm command line with Helm, the Meshery CTL command line, which gives us more control over, which helps the user experience and gives us more control, to Ashish's point, over whether or not you just want to install the operator or you want to install both, both Helm charts. And then in Meshery UI as well, it becomes really apparent inside of Meshery UI, at least to me, is that you may end up loading up and connecting your Meshery server instance to any number of Kubernetes clusters. And the flexibility to just deploy the operator as the only component necessary as the footprint in each of those clusters is, that's a critical capability. So I don't do this often. I sort of feel like, in some respects, feel like I'm at my wit's end in a positive way, because others are here, Matt and Cyrine and Ashish, that might arrive at I'll acknowledge that there's I think this is true for maybe all of us to varying degrees, is that maybe none of us on the call would say that we're an operator SDK master or necessarily a Helm ninja, so to speak, and that there might be some ins and outs, some of them that I think Matt is probably pointing out, that once you get a few layers deep, you might figure out that, what we have today is achievable, or you could keep it as is, but here's the caveats and here's how you'd have to change some of the behavior. And
I think one way to consider it, or one way to think about it in terms of what's the predicate, what's the goal, is, it's all fine to have Meshery CTL and have more fine-tuned capabilities, but so long as you don't, for example, require a user to do something in Meshery CTL after installing an operator or something like that, that would be, in my view, an indicator that you're kind of doing an end run around some of the core benefits of leveraging Kubernetes as a platform, right? You want to be able to say, here is what should be, here's my desired state. I want to connect to these 7 clusters in this kind of way, and I also want to do this thing over here. I want to send a duplicate set of log streams over there, whatever, whatever that config is. And it can just be like, kube could apply once, like, or a git ops, or like Argo or Flux can just like grab it from Git, and like, that's it, soup to nuts. Right. And like, so long as that property is retained, then command line tools and extra capabilities are super cool. And running it locally in Docker might be great for development. There's also ways to like patch an instance in and use service meshes, as we all know, for debug scenarios. But like that core property of just like the operators replacing what a human would have to type, as long as we don't add things.
Yeah, here meshery-CTL, if you use meshery-CTL to deploy something, users won't have to do anything extra. The only here operator, the reason I'm saying that meshery operator and meshery server are orthogonal is because meshery operator, generally, like, you have Prometheus operators and all these other operators which manage the life cycle of the components beneath them, and like all of those components are defined as CRDs and all. Meshery server is like it sits outside of, in the architecture diagram, it sits outside of the operator. So operator doesn't manage meshery's life cycle, and meshery doesn't. But yeah, you can deploy and undeploy, but you can manage operator's life cycle through meshery. So that's why operator can't be like the single source.
So that's an inversion of what most people would expect from an operator. But I think you could still retain what you have today if you just like made a minor, like, how you consider it tweak by saying, like, for example, if there's a CRD for meshery server, that's fine. That's fine if there's no instance of it created, but the operator could have the capability to spin up a meshery server. If you want to do some debug capability or some legacy capability where there's an external to Kubernetes on bare metal meshery server, then there's simply the absence of a CRD defined for the server. And then in the configuration for the other components, they point at that server. I would recommend using one of those external name or external DNS, external name, whatever service types that would refer it to your bare metal server. But you don't have to have the server that would manage the operator turns everything upside down, and then now you have corner cases that this discussion started with that are not really solvable.
Yeah, actually, it's because I think meshery operators, a better name would be mesh sync operator, because meshery sits outside. It can like sit outside the cluster. So if we think hierarchically, it can manage the life cycle of operator, because it's not. It can, like, meshery being inside of your cluster, inside of on a bare metal, on a Docker. It's like it doesn't matter where it is, and we have the way we handle multi-cluster is that for meshery, all those clusters are just some external entities to reach out to and manage. So on that hierarchical level, on a cluster level, meshery server sits above all the clusters. So it can be in a cluster while managing some cluster outside of, like, it can be in cluster 1 and then managing stuff in cluster 2, cluster 3, cluster 4. So sure. It's not so it's not inside, so it's not cluster dependent, cluster scoped. It can be deployed inside of cluster while at the same time managing operators across different clusters.
Managing operators or talking to the components that operators would do, see, I guess what I'm saying is, if you leave it, if the operator is the supreme controller of, the supreme overlord, like everything you do could be done by the operator. If you want to manually do some things, fine, right? That's fine. But in terms of a core capability, like, if you do it the other way, then to anyone who's deployed a Kubernetes compliant environment, their release processes are like, give me your YAML, and that's all that's required, right? So like, and this is how we install YAML, and then pick your pipeline, but whoever, and then there's a huge variety of pipelines, but they all are predicated on the operator controls all of the things on a cluster. And now I can CI clusters. Now that we have the cluster API, right now I can, like, a CI job spins up a cluster and deploys my stuff to it. And I don't have to have a separate auditing, threat modeling, compliance, approval process, to manually install a Helm chart, if it, you know what I mean? Or having to require this ordering of things. So I think, again, like, I'm not suggesting you do or don't do anything, but I am saying that I hear an either or argument when I think it's a both. Right, like if you install the operator with no server CRD defined, then you've effectively got what you have today. But for someone who is a Kubernetes everything environment and they categorically don't want to run VMs, they retain the ability to then create a server CRD and have the config point that way. Like, you don't have to choose, in other words, from the development side. And I don't want to rat hole, but I'm happy to chat offline or
You can have your cake
I'm a
and eat it
resource.
too.
Yeah, I'm a resource. Use me, but yeah, I don't want to take more time in this big meeting than the topic warrant.
Okay. Yeah, so probably you'll carry on the discussions after this call with Ashish or D. So yeah, anything else we need to see? Yeah, Lee, you are saying something.
I just what a great conversation. I mean, yeah, you can have your cake and eat it too. In some respects, summarizes what Matt is saying, and yeah, it's like this is my own embarrassment, that not to be shared by anyone else. But yeah, the duplication and overlap that we're like painfully and slowly taking ourselves through by not leveraging Kubernetes native capability is like a point of embarrassment for me. There's, you can justify it and there's reasons for it, but
well, I wouldn't go that far, because a lot of the capabilities we're talking about, for example, CAPI, the cluster API, which like is one of the things that makes any of this even possible. Like if you want to treat clusters like cattle, not pets, although that's an anti-animal thing, if you want to treat them as ephemeral or disposable, that capability didn't exist more than a year ago, and didn't exist more than like 6 months ago in a non-beta state for many of the major cloud providers. So like, what we're talking, this is iteration on a fast moving ecosystem. I wouldn't go so far as to go there. Just
good.
Okay, good. So I think Kanika is not there. So moving on to my item, which is RJSF form refinement. And I mean, whenever I create any design, either in the mesh map or in the from the Meshery design catalog, I have a very big nested forms that comes up onto my page without giving context of what I'm doing and whatever. And the automatically expanding all the fields also creates some validation issues, specifically in the mesh map, because we are showing it to the users also. So yeah, so to remove all those things and to give a final site for the users, it's an RJSF refinement that we have added some kind of expand collapse state on object fields also, which has a title enclosed in it, and kind of have something as these children. So this is very simple RJSF form, but if we can go to something like cron job, which is like holds something bigger in its schema. So you see job template has metadata and spec. So right now you can see all these things, like what job template provides and what you want to specifically alter. For example, metadata or spec, based on what you want to change, you can make your amendments or whatever configurations there. And that's how the look is right now. So with this very minor change, the form looks much cleaner. You can also once you're done with this, you want to get out of this view, you can collapse it. Any change done here while while you have collapsed it, it will retain it will retain as it is, remain as it is. So that's the update for the RJSF schema. RJSF form refinements, and that is solving a bunch of issue I just talked about. So yeah, that's the first update I have on RJSF forms. Any comments there before moving to the second item? So this is the PR that specifically does it. You can see through it. I'll give it. I'll add a link to the doc also. I just forget to do it.
Okay, so if I take that, I don't want to talk too much in the context of mesh map, but in the context of validation errors, if I take a component and if I have all the parent level fields okay, then there would be no validation errors just because that I haven't filled in three levels deep child field.
No, no, no. You won't see because that schema is completely thrown away. So any RJSF validation are done on schema and not the form data. So these two being completely independent. Basically, in short, yeah, you won't. Okay, I hope I mean, we don't have any other comments there. So moving on to the next item, eslint pictures in Meshery UI. So this has been a long-standing item, like a very long. It's been on from 3 August, and so I mean, need some help here, completing the items. I think some checks in the eslint RC, which was checked. They are suppressed by the eslint RC JSON file, which was causing a big problems in the UI. Sometimes sometimes the UI just crashes because something is undefined and they're being called inside the code. So all these problems were originating from one small eslint configuration which was no undev. I think to be exact, it was no unused wars, and these two. I mean, they also create kind of confusions rendering things on the UI side. There were many duplicate keys, as you see, 52 additions, 85 decisions. So all these things were cluttering the UI, and time to time they are showing something like very vague to understand like where the things broke. So yeah, these are the changes that is done to get rid of all these things. And the last was Meshery extension E2E test. So we have a Meshery extension which is called MeshMark, and there is a repository specifically that provides the package. That if you have the access to MeshMark, then all these packages will be downloaded from this repository. And before the MeshMark or Meshery extensions development is being done on a separate repo which is private for now. So all those those being exposed to the user needs to be the code needs to be tested for the quality purpose to ensure like everything works fine even after all the pull requests on a bunch of commits. So that's what we are doing in this mesh extensions packages E2E test. So we have added some workflows and for testing the source code on each pull request and on each commit, and then on post release also. So if something happens, post releasing, like something is breaking, then we should be the first to know, like, and that is breaking. So yeah. So these were the 3 updates that I had today from my side. If you have any comments then.
Nope, the UX improvement on the forms makes a lot of sense. And it's a little more than, I guess it still qualifies as UX, but it's the step forward does alleviate a lot of pain. Actually, I guess it's more than UX. It's like it's a bug, because if there's certain required fields that you're not intending to even use, and the form is forcing you to use them, then yeah, that's more than you. So yeah, that's great. Alpha is up next.
Yeah.
All right, sharing my screen. Share. Okay, so my PR is about removal of the use of Kubernetes manifest in the system update command in meshery-CTL. So previously, we have transitioned from using the Kubernetes manifest to help charts, but still there has been found a certain usage of this manifest in the system update command, which ultimately caused some failure in the integration test as well. So I have worked on it, and like I found out that, let me give me a second. Yeah, sure. All right. So I was able to remove the manifest code which is present in the system update for both the Docker as well as the Kubernetes platforms. And ultimately, the end result is the integration test was started to function normally. But there has been some kind of a failure, which is because of the old version present here in the test files of the meshery-CTL, which is the latest version is not been updated yet. But that part Antoinette is working on, so I haven't touched that part yet. So yeah, that's much of it actually. So I have able to remove the K8's manifest, and it was able to work as mentioned. So yep, that's much of it. Any comments on it?
I have a comment, but that's
Go ahead.
closely related to the life cycle of Meshery through meshery-CTL. So while you run this thing, can just inside of I guess in meshery-CTL system stop, I've seen this thing that we have a force uninstallation feature which manually picks up each Kubernetes resource and undeploys it. It's a long and weird code, and I had seen it a while back, and I was hoping to talk to someone who was working around this area. So since you're already toes deep into this, system update command, the system update internally uses the stop function, and inside of the stop function, if meshery fails to undeploy something, it tries to undeploy config map by config map, then pod by pod, deployment by deployment, which is quite weird because like the idea of Helm chart is that we package everything into one thing. So if we add something in our Helm chart, then what we'll have to do is we'll have to manually go into our code and undeploy it in the force feature. So it kind of seemed redundant. While you're on it, just take a look there as well, so that we are not trying to do all that. So there's a force flag or a force uninstall
Force
method
stop.
inside of delete inside of stop
Yeah,
stop
okay.
routine.
Okay, I get it. I will take a look at it, Ashish. Any more comments? Guess that's it.
Yeah. Then it looks like it's time for Gaurav to discuss about Meshery 0.7 planning. Gaurav, you're there.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Yeah, so the agenda item is about Meshery.7 planning. So currently we are at .6 for Meshery, and parallel to it, the whole Meshery UI is being refactored, and multiple people who are working on this particular refactoring. And if you are interested in Meshery UI refactoring, you can also jump in over there and provide help in this particular area. So let me share the link of spreadsheet in chat. So for this refactoring, some principles are being followed, such as React 17, Material UI 5, and Redux as a state management tool. So if you want to know how you can contribute to this particular refactoring, you can have a look at this particular README file. And you can add your name to any of the component that you would like to refactor, or say hi in Meshery UI channel. And the best benefit you can get out of this refactoring is that you will get to know more about Meshery code base. So the particularly Meshery UI code base. So volunteers are needed for this .7 roadmap feature champion against all the issues. Yeah, Yeah, next item is also by me. So it was a fix of end-to-end and integration Meshery UI text, Meshery UI. So let me go to the PR. So yeah, this PR was recently merged 2 days ago. So it covers graphical utility package for queries and mutations, end-to-end test fix for user preference spec, and integration for user preference spec. And this was merged. And now we have all the green checks in any of the PR for the UI we check. But at a bare minimum cost, we disabled the filters for on temporary basis, and for that I have already created an issue over there. So this issue requires a change for the request that we are sending in Cypress test using graphical interception. So I have tagged Mario on this particular issue. He can provide some help. And if anyone else is also interested in writing more end-to-end test cases for Meshery, they can also jump in over there. To know more about Cypress, we are using Cypress as an end-to-end testing tool for Meshery. You can go over here to learn more about Cypress and how you can set up your local environment for Meshery UI for writing more test cases. Yep.
Yeah, hey, Gaurav, on the prior topic about Meshery UI refactoring, so there's been a fair bit of effort. It's been kind of a, well, the community has gotten a jump start on that refactoring, knowing that that was something that we desired to do. Now that we're here and working on the .7 release, and my open question, and so it's fantastic. There's a whole spreadsheet of all the components that are being rewritten and uplifted and being made to be MUI5 compatible and Next.js 11 something compatible and React 7. I thought it was gonna be 17, but maybe 19 compatible or something. Anyway, just a bunch of uplift upgrade on the frameworks being used. It'd be really nice to be able to move to some of those newer frameworks without having to go whole hog on displacing the current Meshery UI with the changes that are in the refactored branch. Pankaj, I don't know if this is even a feasible thing, or if maybe one framework is feasible to move forward, but yeah. Anyway,
That's because since we are moving to Material UI 5 and UI 5 on the restructuring branch, and MUI 5 only works with React 17 and above. So since the structuring branch has already taken that step, those changes need to be made for those components that we are working on, and only then React 17 will work along with MUI 5. And it's pretty good to move from Material UI 4 to MUI 5 because there's significant improvement that we get in styling and the different components that are there. So I couldn't figure out a way that, let's say, apart from MUI 5 and React, which ones are the ones to pick on, because Next.js, again, the newer version will depend upon React 17 and further. So it's better if, since MUI 5 upgrade has been started with some components that is finished up, so React 17 works, and then in turn Next 11 and further also works. So that will be a really a big dump or a big change that will be brought.
yeah, darn. Yeah, I was hoping that it wasn't. Yeah, because there's just more risk associated with. Okay. Well, Gaurav, it might, and for those that are involved in that refactoring, this has been a consistent topic of the Meshery dev meeting, so that's wonderful. We might, if you think about it, we might start to do a few demos, or we might start to. I'm just trying to identify how we can bridge that divide, because there's no doubt that the current Meshery UI, at the point in time in which some of these components were refactored, the current Meshery UI has advanced with some new capabilities, and so some of that refactoring is out of date. And Yeah, it'd be good to just get a walkthrough or a tour of the current state of that refactoring from a demo perspective.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'll make sure there will be a demo on this new refactoring on next call. Yep. Back to you, Abhi.
Yes, so there has been a good first issue standing there about adding tooltips to the card component. So I think Kamal is taking this item, so Harkirat will reach him soon. Next is multi-cluster. Allow users to specify meshery broker endpoint manually. Like this is the last minute topic, or can move it to the future call also. If it is a big item to discuss right now, it's up to you, Lee.
Yeah, you didn't say lead. Did you say Jason or Lee?
I said yeah, it's your turn, and if you are out of time, then we can further discuss it in another call, like in the next call. If it can't be kind of completed or picked up in 1 minute or
Yeah, 1 minute on this next one is really relevant to the operator SDK discussion and the custom resource definitions, and that is that in one of the two current custom resources that are used, where it's just this particular issue, the one called allow users to specify meshery broker endpoint manually. It's really helpful for for many of us that are on this call as you go to run potentially multiple clusters on the same local system. In certain situations, you find that your ports are overlapping on the same local host interface, the broker ports, the meshery broker ports. So it's really convenient to be able to specify and tell the broker to use an alternative port. In part to what Matt Young was saying earlier on the call, well, there's a lot of value to be derived from use of the custom resources and honoring and sort of adhering the settings that a user might define inside that custom resource. So today there's the custom resource for meshery broker. Part of it, it's not that long of a configuration. Part of the configuration says it identifies the external, like the type of networking to be used, the external IP, the internal IP, and maybe the port number. And I don't believe that, if a user goes in and they modify those settings, today the meshery operator will, I believe, ignore those and kind of and overwrite changes that an administrator might define. So that's what that point is about. So it's something to kind of, as we dig more into operators, that level of control over the deployment is advantageous. So it's an open issue out there. I'll grab the issue number. Yep, that was it for me.
yeah, and with that we are out of time too. So let's continue the rest of the items in the next meeting, in the next development call on Wednesday again. So till then, good day, goodbye. Thank you everyone for joining once again.
Bye guys. Thank you, Abhi.
Thank you.